I love sweet potato soup, but to use purple sweet potatoes is an absolute revelation. First of all, they're delicious, but second, they're just a glorious, deep purple color, and they make the most beautiful soup. And this is one of those soups that you can make for company or just for your kids on a weeknight. I just fried bacon in a big Dutch oven, and then I took the bacon out of the pan. So into the same pot, I added sliced red onion, some minced garlic, oregano and thyme, and I'm just stirring it around. Oh, it smells so incredible. And look at this pan, Paige. Look at the bottom of this pan. Look at all that flavor in there.
Yum.
Now that is the start of a delicious soup right there. Okay, so now I'm gonna add the purple sweet potatoes, AKA purple yams. You can find these really in specialty grocery stores year-round or like regular supermarkets, sometimes get them in the fall. I love any root vegetable soup, and so you could actually use all sweet potatoes, or you could use sweet potatoes and turnips or parsnips. You could sort of do a root vegetable celebration. I like going all purple. It just kind of drives that point home. So I've got the potatoes and the onions all mixed together. So I'm gonna cook this mixture for 3 minutes. Alrighty, so those have kind of had a chance to start cooking. So I'm gonna add some cumin. Yummy, yummy with sweet potato soup. And coriander, another great fall spice, and some salt and pepper. And then I'll give it a quick stir just so the spices kind of coat the potatoes and the onions. My gosh, I love this soup. So I'm gonna add the broth. I'm using vegetable broth, and you can use chicken broth if you're not interested in it being like vegetarian. I just picked vegetable because usually when I make like a root vegetable soup, I'll use vegetable broth. But any kind of broth will do. So 1 carton plus a cup or so. Okay, give it one more stir. And now we just have to be patient. I'm gonna crank up the heat, bring this to a boil, and let it cook for 15 minutes, and then I'll finish it up. Okay, the soup's just about done, so I'm going to make an incredible topping that is part of the wonder of the soup, and it's part of what makes it so pretty too. So the bacon that I cooked in the pot, right from the top, I'm chopping it up, and it's gonna be part of the topping. Okay, so I've got a little bowl, and I'm gonna put the bacon in the bowl, and then I have some other things to add to the bacon. Pistachios, chopped pistachios, they're so pretty. And then chopped parsley, and chopped oregano, and then a little bit of turmeric. A little goes a long way, so don't go overboard. And then I'll get a little spoon and stir it together. But you could do any combination of herbs and nuts.
That looks so good.
It does look good, doesn't it? All right, so now back to the soup. Time to puree. So look at this first page. I'll show you what it looks like. See those sweet potatoes? They're pretty much falling apart, and that's the stage that you want to get it to before you puree. So I'm going to use an immersion blender. That way I don't have to take it out of the pot. Wish me luck. I'm going in. All right. Paige, come take a look at this. Did I promise you purple soup or what?
Wow.
Isn't that pretty? But it's not like obnoxious purple. It's like beautiful, deep, earthy purple. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how pretty it is to serve. Plain bowl. Gonna fill it with the soup. And you don't actually have to fill the bowl because that would be a lot of soup.
That really is purple.
It's
Super
pretty,
purple.
isn't it? All right. Ooh, that looks good. And then a little bit of sour cream. Ooh. And then the moment Paige has been waiting for, Okay. Just a little sprinkle. Isn't that pretty?
Oh, that's so pretty.
Gorgeous. I love it. Mmm. This soup is delicious. I started by putting the multi-cooker in saute mode, and I melted some butter. I just dropped in some chopped bacon, and in goes some sliced onion. Pretty good start to a soup. And I'm gonna stir these around just to get them totally coated in the butter. Oh, it already smells so good. And to make the soup extra scrumptious, I've got some fresh oregano. And I'll stir this around. I'm gonna give it about 3 minutes to cook. Moving on, I've got some minced garlic. And this is corn and green chili chowder. So I'm using 2 cans of diced green chilies. I'm not gonna drain them, I'll just put them right in. If you wanna get fancy, you can roast your own green chilies. I didn't wanna get fancy. I'm already running late, so the canned chilies are a great shortcut. And then I've got some fresh corn kernels, and then I'll stir this around just a little bit longer. I'm gonna add the liquid, just low sodium chicken broth. I'm gonna add about 3 cups or so. I'm gonna make a slurry to thicken the chowder. So I'll pour a little more broth into the pitcher, and I'll add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. So the slurry goes in. I'll give it a stir. The lid goes on. Now I'm gonna set the seal, and I'm gonna let this pressure cook for 5 minutes, and then I'll release the steam, and it'll be ready for the final step. When the little button pops down, then you can pull off the lid. Oh my gosh, it's really amazing how much happens in such a short amount of time in a pressure cooker. It just looks like it's been simmering away for 2 or 3 hours. Now I'm gonna make this ultra creamy by adding heavy cream. That's what corn chowder is all about for me. Creamy and rich and luscious. You don't have to have a big bowl. A little goes a long way. So now I've got 2 kinds of cheeses. Regular Monterey Jack, some pepper jack, just to give it a little bit of spice. Cheese is my favorite thing in the world. Now it needs just a little bit of salt and pepper. Okay, I'm gonna stir this all together. And while I do, let me show you how I serve this up. Everyone gets a bowl of the chowder. It is so pretty. Look at those flecks of color and that creamy cheesiness. Then a sprinkle of sliced green onions, a chunk of bread, and that's a working lunch. Totally easy. The multi-cooker is my new favorite pot, and I'm gonna use it to make black bean soup. Basically, I'm just gonna throw everything in there, and before I know it, I'm gonna have a delicious soup with all the fixins. I'm gonna cook some veggies in saute mode first. And I've got some finely diced onion and minced garlic. Delicious start. And then I have some diced red bell pepper. I just took the seeds out. A multi-cooker is primarily an electronic pressure cooker, but the great thing about it is you can saute in it before you put the lid on and pressure cook whatever it is you're making. Really a miraculous machine, if you ask me. I'm also gonna add some sliced jalapenos, and then I'll stir all this around. And now I'm just gonna let the veggies cook until they're soft. It's gonna take 4 minutes. I'm back with the chili powder, and that goes in next. I'll add a couple of tablespoons. Gotta have chili powder whenever you make black beans. They just go together. And then a tablespoon of ground cumin, another of my favorites. And then the beans need quite a bit of salt, so I'll add a couple of teaspoons and give this a stir. Oh gosh, those veggies look amazing. Before I put the veggies into the multi-cooker, I added a little bit of lard. You can do butter or oil, whatever you prefer. Okay, this looks great. So I'll add in the beans, just dried black beans. And for the liquid, I've got vegetable broth. You can use chicken broth, even water would work, but I like the flavor of broth. Now the final thing is to set it to cook on manual. Here goes. So it's 50 minutes of cooking, followed by 10 minutes for the pressure to release naturally. Then I'll release the rest of the steam through quick release. The fun part is always taking off the lid and seeing what's inside. It looks really thick and rich. So this is a good time to add the juice of a couple of limes. All right, now I'll stir. And then you can serve the black bean soup just as it is now with the whole beans. But I kind of like to puree the beans a little bit just so the soup has a mix of textures. So there's no better tool for that than an immersion blender. Okay, I'm gonna stop there because I really like the texture. It's sort of a cross between refried beans and whole beans. So you wanna get a nice bowl with a wide rim. Gosh, this looks great. Okay, now for the fixins, I'm gonna add some sour cream, some diced avocado, some diced red onion, and some diced tomato. How gorgeous is this looking? And then just cilantro leaves. Sprinkle them over. It's always nice to give it a little extra squeeze of lime. The concept of Bloody Mary chili because it combines two things I really associate with watching football games: chili and Bloody Marys. It's the perfect combination. All right, now I've been starting by sauteing some onions and celery, and I'll add some garlic to give it amazing flavor. And now for the beef, and I'll just go right in with it, and then I'll just stir this around and get the beef cooking. I need it to get totally brown, so I'll let it keep going. Now, normally when I make chili, I usually let the meat brown and then I add some tomato products like diced tomatoes, tomato juice. But this time, I'm gonna whip up a batch of Bloody Marys and that's gonna go into the chili. It's a really, really fun variation. So into the pitcher, I'll add about a half a bottle of Bloody Mary mix, about 15 ounces or so. And then of course, Bloody Mary has vodka in it. So I just pour in a little bit of vodka, not too much, about 1/4 cup or so, give or take. These are big, strong men. And then for some nice savory flavor, some Worcestershire sauce. And I know those guys like spice, so I need to put some hot sauce in here. They would be disappointed if it didn't burn their tongue just a little bit. Now, one ingredient I always add to Bloody Marys when I make them, it's a little unusual, Montreal steak seasoning. I love this kind of seasoning. It's just so deep and savory and a little bit salty. It makes everything absolutely delicious. And that right there is Bloody Mary. I could just pour this over a glass of ice right now, but I won't. It's gotta go into the chili. Okay, the meat is totally brown. Now, if there's excess grease, you can drain it off, but there wasn't too much here. It was pretty lean. So for the chili seasoning, I'll add a good amount of chili powder. I love that deep, dark flavor. I always add cumin to my chili. There's just that unmistakable flavor that I absolutely love. And then a little bit of ground oregano, another great chili seasoning. And I'll stir this around. Oh, it smells so good. Now, you guessed it. It's time for the Bloody Mary to go in. This is gonna create the most delectable sauce. Oh, smells so good. And then I have 2 different kinds of beans. I just had a can of kidney beans and a can of pinto beans. I drained them and rinsed them, and they just go right in. And I'll just stir them in. All right, looking so good. Now I'm gonna put the lid on, and I'm gonna simmer it for an hour, and it's gonna get even better. I've already browned 1 batch of pork. I'm using pork shoulder that I cut into chunks. It's my favorite kind of pork to use for any stew or roast. It's really tough when it's uncooked, And then the longer you cook it, the more it just falls apart and becomes tender. I toss the chunks of pork in a little bit of flour and salt and pepper. The flour just helps develop a nice crust when you're browning it. I'm really searing the heck out of this pork. I want to get it really brown because that's where the flavor comes in. Now I'm going to make the rest of the stew, and I've got a bunch of chopped onion. This stew cooks for a long time, so you want to start with quite a nice pile. And then I'm also adding carrots. I'm going to add some garlic, and then I have some oregano, and I'll pick off the leaves, and then I'll chop it up and add it in. So the oregano goes in, and then I have some ancho chili powder. A little goes a long way, so I'm going to add a tablespoon, and that should be good. A little more salt and pepper. Okay, I'll stir all of this so the flavors are mixed together. Okay, I need the veggies to cook for about 5 minutes. So while they do, I'm going to peel and chop the roasted poblanos. Okay, I got the poblanos chopped. Now I also have a jalapeno pepper, a serrano pepper, and some husked tomatillos. I put all of these right under the broiler for about 5 minutes, tossed them in olive oil first. They all got some little bit of black skin. They're not totally charred like if I had roasted them over an open flame. I'll just chop the tomatillos roughly. All of this is going to go into the stew and cook low and slow, so you don't have to dice everything too fine. I took out the seeds of the poblano chilies, but I actually left the seeds of the jalapenos and serranos. I may live to regret that. It's going to make the stew pretty spicy. That's what sour cream is for, right? Okay, I'll give this a stir. All this beautiful browned pork. It makes such a difference to sear the pork before you put it in. If you just put it in raw, you would never get that beautiful caramelized flavor. Then 2½ cups of vegetable broth. And finally, a couple of bay leaves. And I'll get everything stirred. I'll turn the heat down, and I'm gonna let it cook for an hour. Time's up. Let's take a look. Now, the first thing I need to do is fish out the bay leaves. I'm gonna cut a lime in half, and this is a really juicy lime. It's amazing what a difference this little bit of lime juice makes in this stew. And then I chopped some cilantro, about 1/4 cup, and it goes in, and I'm gonna stir this beautiful mixture together. Now, with the stew, I'm freezing some white corn tortillas, and then just a couple of separate containers of grated cheddar cheese. Now I've got to transfer the stew into a foil container. And while I do, let me tell you how this gorgeous meal comes together. So I'll put the pan of frozen stew into a 375-degree oven for 40 minutes, then put in some tortillas wrapped in foil, give everything another 10 minutes, and then take them out. Now it's all about serving up. Everyone gets a big bowl full of the green chili deliciousness with some of the cheddar cheese I froze and thawed, some chopped fresh cilantro, sour cream, a lime wedge, and tortillas. Dinner for 6 could not be easier. So I started by sauteing some onion, and I'm adding some peppers. I've got red bell pepper and poblano peppers along with some garlic. Such a delicious, flavorful combination for this soup. So for seasoning, I've got 2 different kinds of chili powder. Just regular old chili powder that you'd find in any supermarket, a couple of tablespoons, and then some ancho chili powder, just a slightly different flavor, a little smoky, very, very scrumptious. And I'll go ahead and add some salt and pepper to the veggies. Looking good already. So a couple more things to add. I've got some adobo sauce. This is just a can of chipotle peppers. I'm not adding the chipotle peppers. I'm just getting some of the sauce that they're packed in. And then a can of diced tomatoes and green chilies. And then just a can of chopped green chilies. Another favorite in my pantry, All right, now I'm gonna stir this around and get them mixed with the veggies. Oh, this is gonna be so good. So I'm adding broth now, a whole bunch of low sodium chicken broth. I'm gonna crank that heat up. And this is a Tex-Mex meatball soup. So I'm gonna break out the frozen meatballs and I'm gonna add this entire bag. And you can add them just in the frozen state because this soup is so hot and it's going to get so hot that they're gonna heat up in no time at all. So now I just need to bring this to a boil, then I'll reduce the heat and let the soup simmer for 10 minutes. Okay, so I got all the soup components ready. The soup itself, I have a little bag of ditalini pasta. It's already cooked just under the al dente stage, so it'll stay really firm in the soup. And some sour cream, of course. And then I have some cotija cheese and then some cilantro. And I wrapped the stems in a damp paper towel and put them inside the baggie. And that way the cilantro will stay fresh in the fridge. And a lime, of course. What a soup kit. It looks delicious. Wait till you see how it all comes together. When it's time to serve up, I'll add pasta to everyone's bowl, ladle hot soup on top, making sure to get meatballs and peppers and the delicious broth. Then, to make it extra tasty, some sour cream, a sprinkling of cotija cheese, some chopped cilantro, and a wedge of lime to squeeze over the top. I'm starting by sauteing some onion and garlic in a little bit of olive oil and butter. I've got the onions diced really fine. Don't want to have great big chunks. Okay, I'm gonna let the onions cook for a sec while I chop up some fresh herbs. I have some yummy oregano leaves. I pulled them off the stems. And then I also have some fresh thyme. These stems are so delicate, I'm just gonna chop them with the oregano. Okay, now all of these yummy herbs are gonna go in with the onions and garlic. Smells so good. This is a good time to add a pinch of salt and pepper. And I'll stir it all together. And then I need to cook the onions until they're totally soft and translucent. It's gonna take about 5 minutes. Okay, I'm gonna check on these onions. Oh, they look great. Okay, I'm gonna turn up the heat to about medium-high. And I've got a can of tomato paste, and I'll add a couple of tablespoons. It's really thick. And then for about 30 seconds, I'm gonna stir the tomato paste into the onions and garlic and let it start to fry. If you can fry it on the bottom of the pan, it just deepens the flavors. And this is a great time to deglaze the pan with some white wine. I happen to have a bottle. It's just Sauvignon Blanc, but you can use Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, whatever you happen to have in your fridge. I usually add about a half a cup. I've got 2 cans of stewed tomatoes. And then 32 ounces of just bottled tomato juice. I like to add sugar to my tomato soup because there is so much tomato going on that it can get a little bit acidic. And the sugar kind of calms that down a little bit. It's nice to have the subtle sweetness. I'll do just a little over 2 tablespoons and that should be good. Now all I have to do is bring the soup to a boil and then I'm gonna simmer it for 10 minutes. See you after that. The tomato soup has been simmering away and truth be told, it is perfect as it is right now. I cannot help myself though. I love to add cream to my tomato soup. You can kind of eyeball it and add between a half a cup and a cup. I'm gonna add some basil. And then this is cheesy tomato soup, so I've got 2 kinds of grated cheese. I've got Parmesan and Pecorino Romano. Yummy, sharp combination. And then I'll stir it in, and it's so finely grated that the 2 cheeses are just gonna become one with the soup in no time. How good does this soup look? I'm gonna go ahead and dish it up into a bowl. And I'm using a pretty big bowl. You can sort of grab whatever bowl is oven-proof in your cabinet. I've got 2 croutons. I just sliced from a loaf of bread, and I put them in the oven after smearing them with olive oil, and I just baked them until they were crisp and slightly golden. And then I'm breaking out another cheese. I've got some regular cheddar cheese, and I'm laying little slices on top of each crouton. Now I'm gonna put this under the broiler. This looks splendid. Okay, to finish it off, I'm gonna sprinkle on a little bit of parsley, more herbage. Well, one pot, one bowl, sheer heaven. Perfect. It is summertime, and that means it's time to haul hay. And that's exactly what Ladd and the crew are gonna do today. So I am gonna get dinner ready so that when they're all finished hauling hay, they can just come home, settle in, and chow down. Now, first up on the menu is delicious chunky chili. And it actually takes about 3 hours to cook, and that's why I'm starting it now before the hay hauling even begins. So, before you got here, I tossed a bunch of chuck roast in seasoned flour. I just seasoned it with salt and pepper. I also seasoned the chunks of chuck roast. Okay, so I'm gonna crank up the heat just a little bit, and look at how brown this is, Paige. How beautiful. Can you see into the pot? Yum, yum, yum. Now I'm gonna add all the stuff that turns beef into chili. So 2 cans of tomato sauce. Most of the time, whenever I make chili here on Drummond Ranch, I use ground beef, and it's more of a ground beef-based hamburger chili. But I love chunky chili. It's almost like stew when you finish it up, but it has all the, not to be confused with that stew.
Stew.
So I've got the beef and tomato sauce in the pan, and I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of regular chili powder. And then, for a little spin, ooh, a tablespoon of ancho chili powder, which is really just unmistakable. I love the flavor of ancho chili powder. And I like combining regular chili powder with ancho. And then, whoop, get the tablespoon in there. Tablespoon of cumin. Okay, and then some minced garlic goes in. Look at that, doesn't that look good? And I'll stir it around. And then I've got to add about a cup of water just to help make the chili nice and saucy. My girls grew up hauling hay on this ranch. Would you girls say it's one of your favorite activities or one of your least favorite?
Least favorite.
She gets down there on the least.
I never understood why they don't love it, because you really just stay in a truck and just haul back and forth. But
Because you're pulling thousands of pounds of hay.
that's so true. So I added a cup of water and some salt and pepper. And now,
You need a bottle opener.
do I? I guess I don't drink beer. I do need a bottle opener. Shoot. Hold on. Yeah, would you please? Thank you, Alex. Detu Adis. Okay, so next thing I'm gonna add is a bottle of beer. I just like beer and chili, and I like beer and chili. So, a few dashes of hot sauce, because I get nervous if I don't add hot sauce to everything I make. And then the last thing, I'm gonna go ahead and add the beans now. And I've got a can each of pinto beans, black beans, and kidney beans. And I have them in these little strainers because I poured them out of the cans and I rinsed them and drained them.
Do you know that some people don't like beans in their chili?
I know, beans and chili is a controversial thing. But I like to add them now. They're gonna get kind of mushy and all mixed in, but that doesn't matter to me. All right, so now all I've gotta do is put the lid on the pot, turn it down to a simmer, and let it cook for 3 hours. See you back then. Okay, over to the hay hauling. The hay's already been cut, raked, and baled, so Ladd enlisted Todd to help him haul it. They'll pick up the big bales with the tractor, load them onto trailers, haul them to a different part of the ranch, and they'll be all ready to feed the cattle this winter.
This is the job where you got to kind of know what you're doing.
not bad once you get the hang of it.
I'm gonna take them some cookies in a little while, and they are gonna be excited because they are their favorite. Cowboy Josh and his little boy Taos are joining him later, but for now, it's just Lad and Todd. All right, the hay operation has officially begun, and this chili is officially done. That was kind of a rhyme. Look at this. Can you believe this is what the chili looks like after 3 hours? Every now and then I checked it and gave it a stir and made sure it wasn't getting too dry. If you feel like it is, you can always just splash in more hot water. It looks perfect. Now I'm gonna actually let it cool before I put it in the fridge, but I know someone here really wants to taste this. Who is it? Paige. Paige is hungry. Her mouth is watering, so look at this, Alex. Now I made some condiments to go with the chili. Chipotle cream, which is nothing more than chipotle peppers, a little bit of adobo sauce, and sour cream. I'm gonna put it right on top, along with a little bit of red onion and a little bit of cilantro. I think we should taste it together.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
Me too, this looks amazing. Oh.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
So I'm gonna chill the little condiments on a tray, cover this up. These will be ready to go. And then I'm gonna let the chili cool down completely, and then I'll put it in the fridge. The main course for dinner is already done. I love it when that happens. So I'm making this stew with boneless short ribs, which are my favorite cut of beef. Did you know that? Short ribs?
I did not know that.
Absolutely incredible. It winds up tasting like the very best pot roast that you've ever had, except better. It's like a luscious version of chuck roast. So I cut the boneless short ribs into chunks and I browned them. Look how brown these are. So brown. So I'm just taking them out for a minute. And in the same pot, I'm gonna add some onion chunks, big old chunks of onion, and carrot chunks and garlic. I'm gonna crank up the heat even more, and I'm gonna add some tomato paste. Tomato paste is one of the best tips I can give whenever you're making any pot roast recipe. Just add a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste, and it doesn't really give it a tomato sauce or base, but it just adds depth and interest and passion. It's so good. Okay, so I'm stirring so the tomato paste kind of hits the bottom of that pan. Look at this, delicious. So now for the liquid. Let's just cut to the chase here. 2 bottles of beer. And then a couple of cups of beef broth. Very savory, luscious stew. Squirt, squirt, squirt. And then some Worcestershire sauce and salt and pepper. So easy. You just want to be sure to start this much earlier than you need it because stew does take a while. Sprigs of rosemary and a couple of bay leaves, and then I'll stir it all together. Oh, forgot to add the meat back in. I almost put the lid on and cooked this for 2 hours.
Veggie stew.
That would have been awkward. Okay, so all this meat goes in, and you definitely want to hold it so all those juices go into. Beautiful. So now I'm gonna put the lid on, turn the heat down, and simmer this for 2.5 hours until that meat is fall apart tender. I like to serve it with egg noodles. Usually I use wide egg noodles, but these are the skinny ones. Oh, yum, yum. But I am never content just to serve noodles plain, so I'm gonna add some butter and a whole bunch of parsley. And then I always like to add a little bit of salt and pepper to the noodles. I think buttered noodles with salt and pepper are the ultimate comfort food. Just toss and let that butter just slowly melt. You can also add lemon zest. I like noodles with lemon zest, butter, parsley, salt, pepper. That's a yummy summer pasta.
And wine.
And wine, well, wine in a glass, for sure. Okay, the noodles are buttered, so let's check out this stew. Come over here. This stew. Ready? Oh,
Now we're talking.
your sound effects are amazing, by the way. Thank you. So I'm gonna take out the bay leaves and the rosemary. It was so nice. It was all gathered up in one little section. And then I'll just use the ladle to get the stew into the bowl with the noodles. But look at this. That meat is so tender. It is absolutely falling apart. And you wanna get juice and all. You don't need to let the juice like drip out. Okay, how does this look, guys?
It looks
Good.
amazing.
It really does. You can spoon extra juice over, which I'm gonna do right now. Look, ready?
Yes.
Oh, gorgeous, gorgeous. Hearty beef stew over buttery parsley noodles. That is a bowl full of marvelous right there. So I've got a pot with some butter, and I actually heated it until it got to the brown stage. And I'm gonna add some onions. And then I have a bowl full of root veggies that I peeled and chopped. Carrots, parsnips, turnips, and rutabagas. And then some ginger and garlic, whole garlic cloves. And then I'm gonna stir these around just to coat them. I'm not gonna have to cook them at this stage. I just wanna kind of get the veggies coated in that delicious brown butter mixture. Sprinkle some salt and pepper. Perfect, and now I'm gonna add the broth. I've got 2 big honkin' cartons of chicken broth. You can also use veggie broth if you wanna keep it truly vegetarian. 2 spices, I've got some allspice and ground coriander, sprig of thyme. Stir all of this together. All right, now I'm just gonna bring it to a quick boil, and then I'll turn it down to a simmer, put the lid on, and let it cook for 20 minutes until the vegetables are totally soft. Okay, the soup has been simmering. It's just about ready to puree, but first I'm gonna fry some shallots that I'm gonna use to serve over the top of the soup. So I've just got some vegetable oil and very thinly sliced shallots. I peeled the shallots and sliced them. And now I'm just gonna fry them in vegetable oil until they're golden brown, and then I'll take them out of the oil and drain them on a paper towel. Look at these beautiful fried shallots. Absolutely incredible topper for soup. All those vegetables have been cooking away, and I'm glad I did that because I'm gonna pull out the thyme. It has done its job. So I'm gonna turn off the stove, and I'm gonna puree the soup. Now, you don't have to puree it. You can keep it pretty chunky, but in the fall, I just love pureed vegetable soups. In the fall, I just love any soup, to be honest. And look at the color of this soup now. So pretty.
That's so pretty.
And look, I love this. Every now and then you get like a chunk of carrot that got missed. But it's kind of like a little treasure hunt that way. And this soup is pretty rich and filling, so a little goes a long way. Okay, so speaking of garnish, I'm gonna get some of these beautiful shallots. Take a look, Paige. And the great thing about shallots is they're so light and like thin and lightweight that they just kind of hover on top. And then I've got some beautiful parsley. Alrighty, very veggie soup with fried shallots on top. A few more would be nice. One of my favorite kinds of soup, lasagna soup, but this is sort of a white lasagna soup. It's got mushrooms and spinach. It's got more of a creamy base rather than a tomato base like my regular lasagna soup has. So I'm gonna cook the mushrooms first, and I'm gonna crank the heat up to high. I started with a little bit of olive oil, and I added a mix of sliced white mushrooms and sliced cremini mushrooms. And I'll add some salt and let them start to cook. It's gonna take 5 minutes to get these nice and brown. Okay, it's looking good. Look, Alex, I know it's hard to see over there, but I got these mushrooms going. They're starting to get kind of brown around the edges. So I'm gonna turn the heat to medium so things don't get too crazy too fast. And I'm gonna add minced garlic and minced thyme. This soup has such amazing flavor. I absolutely love it. So I'm gonna get the garlic going, and then I have to smell it. Italian seasoning, a little more salt, why not? And then I wanna make this a creamy base. So I'm gonna sprinkle just a couple of tablespoons of flour. I just kinda wanna add enough to help the thickening process along without it getting too crazy. I get impatient. I don't like to sit there and pour slowly. It's just not my strength. Okay, now I need to stir this until it starts to bubble and thicken up. Give me another 3 minutes. Okay, I can tell it's kind of starting to simmer around the sides. So this is a good time to add lasagna. Now, a lot of times when I make regular lasagna soup, I will boil the lasagna noodles separately, break them up, boil them, add them to the pot. I'm gonna use par-boiled lasagna sheets, which these are almost done, so you can actually build lasagna with these without cooking them ahead of time, so they're no-cook noodles. And I'm just gonna break them into chunks. And the great thing about adding them to soup is they just take a couple of minutes to soften and become soft pasta noodles. Oh, it's looking so good already. So it's a good time to season with salt and pepper. Yum, yum. And then it's kind of a white / creamy lasagna soup. So while it comes to a boil, I'm gonna add some cream. And this is a personal preference. You can add as little or as much cream as you want. I choose the much option because cream. So we can't forget the spinach. Just gonna go right in with it. And the thing about spinach is it takes a lot because it shrinks, so don't be alarmed at the amount of spinach I just added. This is kind of a luscious, beautiful soup. Look at this. Come look, Alex. How beautiful does that look?
Wow, that looks really good.
All right, with that, this soup is done. So I'm gonna show you what it looks like, all served up, nice and piping hot. You would probably not make this soup in the middle of summer. Look how just gorgeous and rich and magical it is.
It looks amazing.
Oh, it does look amazing. So here is how I like to finish it. I mean, you have to wait like 3 hours to eat that, it's so hot. So little dollops of ricotta, which kind of finishes off the lasagna vibe of this soup. You can kind of do little globs here and there. And then I'll just use the end of the spoon because I'm weird. And then just a little kind of drizzle of pesto out of the jar. Mmm, this looks good. I'm not even gonna pick it up because it's too hot, but I have to taste so I can tell you guys what it's all about. Oh gosh, that's magical. I mean, if they serve soup in heaven, this is definitely at the top of the list. Okay, I just browned a whole bunch of beef. I salted and peppered it, sprinkled it with flour before I fried. I'll start with a bed of big chunks of onion. I've also got big chunks of carrots. Love carrots in stew. Some mushrooms. These are just brown mushrooms. You can use white, a mix of wild mushrooms, anything you want. With stew, there aren't many rules at all. I've got some fresh herbs, rosemary and parsley, and I'm just gonna throw them in whole. This is gonna cook for so long that all the flavors will definitely have a chance to release. I have some red potatoes and I scrubbed them really well, cut them into chunks. This is where the beef goes in. For the meat, I used rump roast. Rump roast is one of those meats I never can quite tell what to do with, but really it's great. If you cook it long enough, it turns out yummy and tender. But I am not content just to use beef in my beef stew. I'm gonna cut some fried bacon into chunks, sprinkle that on. Now, every stew needs a really good cooking liquid, and what better way to whip up one than to pour in some beer? I've just got a bottle of beer. I'll pour about half of it in. I know just what to do with the rest. That'll come later. And then I always add a little bit of tomato paste to any stew recipe I use. Gonna add most of the can, some garlic. Ooh, garlic and beer, how good does that look? And a dash of Worcestershire sauce. And then I'll whisk this together. This gets poured all over the top. Now, because of the tomato paste, that's pretty thick, so I have some beef broth. And I'll pour in just enough. One last thing to add, I just can't help myself. A whole jalapeno, I just sliced it in half, didn't even seed it. That is gonna be one yummy stew. I'll put the lid on, set it on low for 6 hours, and that is gonna be dinner for the Drummond house. Take a look at how it's gonna play out. First, I'll make buttery parsley lemon noodles to go on the side. I'll melt butter with olive oil and throw in garlic, parsley, and lemon zest. Mix it together, then add the fettuccine and toss it around. Look at how it all coats the pasta. Yum. Then the juice of a lemon, a sprinkling of salt and pepper, a quick toss, and it's ready. So everybody gets a big heap of noodles on their plate. Then the stew, beef, vegetables, and gravy. Simply delicious. A little parsley, and that's the whole scrumptious package. I'm making a slow cooker white chicken chili. It's all the good things about chili, but with white beans and chicken, and boy, is it phenomenal. Put a bunch of chicken breasts in there, and now I'll whip up a spice mix. Let's start with cumin, coriander, which is really tasty, paprika, some crushed red pepper flakes, some oregano, and then salt. And instead of black pepper, I'm gonna use white pepper since it's white chicken chili. I'm gonna keep things pure and holy. I'm just gonna sprinkle the spice mix right over the chicken. And now I've got a bunch of good veggies to add. I diced up a bunch of onion. I mean, this is a pile, but this makes a big batch of chili. Okay, I've also got garlic. Can't have chili without a pile of garlic. And for heat, I sliced up some fresh jalapenos. I didn't even seed them. This is such a big batch that it won't be too overpowering. And then I've got 4 stalks of celery. This year, everything has changed in our household. Bryce is officially playing football for Pawhuska schools, so he's not going to the homeschool co-op in Tulsa anymore. Lad is one of the coaches of the high school football team here in Pawhuska. So they basically are at football practice all the time. Okay, just a little more chopping. That is a lot of celery too. A lot of onions, a lot of celery, a lot of flavor. Okay, I've got a couple of green bell peppers. I'm just gonna chop them up, reach in and pull out the seeds. I'm gonna keep the peppers in pretty big chunks. White chicken chili is so good. It's really basically like chicken and bean soup, but when you add all these chili seasonings, it pretty much turns into chili. We're definitely moving into that football time of year. It always sets in every August. First of all, there's high school football games. There's junior high football games. They watch college football on TV, pro football on TV, and when that's not happening, they're talking about football. Now, part of that picture is Lad and I have opposing alma maters. We both went to Pac-12 schools, and our schools are rivals. So when our 2 teams play each other on TV, I have to watch it in the other room because neither Lad nor I can stand to listen to the other one cheer on their team. It's amazing we've stayed married this long. We are a house divided. So the peppers go in. What I try to do is fill the slow cooker as full as I can, and that means we're gonna have lots of good leftovers. Okay, now in addition to the green peppers, I like to add roasted green chilies that are chopped. I don't even drain them, I just pour them right in. So in go the beans. These are Great Northern white beans, and I soaked them overnight and then gave them a good rinse. And finally, the liquid, low sodium chicken broth. White chicken chili is so good because you can dress it up and make it elegant. Serve it with some really nice cornbread sticks, or you can dress it down, just throw it into a mug and eat it in front of the TV. Lid goes on. Now I've got a few more things I've got to do to the chili later. I'll fill you in on that while I run to town. I'll put it on 8 hours on low. I'm gonna go get B-Man. So I'm headed into Pawhuska to pick up Bryce at football practice. And just as I promised, I want to tell you how I finish off the chili. So 30 minutes before the cooking time's up, I'll add a mix of milk and masa to thicken the chili. Then throw in frozen sweet corn, stir it, and give it another 30 minutes. When the cooking time's up, there are just a few more steps before serving. I'll take the chicken out, shred it, and get the chicken back in. I'll add some lime juice, Monterey Jack cheese, and stir it together. So now it's time to serve up the chili. Get ready, it's gonna be delicious. Everybody gets a big bowl full of the good stuff with a dollop of sour cream, extra cheese, of course, chopped cilantro, and some rolled up warmed corn tortillas on the side to complete the picture. Oh my gosh, dinner cannot come soon enough. So I've got some ground beef that I've totally browned in a pot with onion and garlic. And I'm gonna add a bunch of tomato paste. I love the kind in a tube because it's just like toothpaste, basically. I'm gonna do probably 2 heaping tablespoons because this adds such richness in a pretty short amount of time. So I'm gonna turn the heat way up, and I wanna smush the tomato paste into the ground beef and try to kind of get it, can you see that, Paige? Get it on the bottom of the pan and just kind of get the flavors of that tomato paste going. Just kind of release the magic of the tomato paste. Okay, so I'm gonna add some salt and pepper because the ground beef really needs it. And I need a little exercise today. And then taco seasoning. You can't have tacos without some kind of taco seasoning. Okay, so this is a shortcut taco soup, which means you don't stop and let things cook a million times. So I'm gonna add a can of tomatoes with green chilies, which is a staple around these parts. And then fire roasted corn and a can of black beans. And I am being very radical, and I am not draining the beans or the corn. And that's just fine because this is gonna cook so fast and over really high heat. So it's gonna be so good, and it already looks amazing. So then for the liquid, I'm just using vegetable stock. You can use beef stock, chicken stock, whatever stock. And then some hot sauce, your favorite, hot sauce of your choice. And then honestly, talk about a one-pot wonder right here. Now all I need to do is bring this to a boil and let it cook really fast for about 10 minutes. Look how violently it is bubbling away. And that's the secret when you're making a quick, shortcut soup. You wanna just really bring it to a boil and let it just violently cook for, 10, 15 minutes. Whatever you got available in your schedule. Okay, believe it or not, this soup is ready to serve. And the thing is, this soup is perfect as it is, so you could just serve it without any adornments. But as you know, I like fixins, otherwise known as fixings. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how to finish this. Look, this bothers me though. I have to fix this before we continue.
Yeah, that was bothering me.
I can't deal with stuff like that. It keeps me awake at night. Okay, so here, Paige, I'll just put this here so you can really get a good look of the serving. You can also use ground turkey for this delicious soup, but it has such great texture. It's just a triumph, basically. So whatever you put on tacos, you can put on taco soup. So I'm gonna add some cheddar cheese and a good old dollop of sour cream. which I love because you can kind of get little bitty bits of sour cream as you eat it, and it just kind of mixes. Look at all that. I added a lot. And then watch this, this is super fun. Corn chips, ready? And then just sprinkle. Oh my gosh. And then cilantro, of course, just to give it a little freshness. I mean, that took approximately 45 seconds to make, that whole soup. At least it seems that fast. It's perfect for teenagers, college students, middle-aged moms. Not naming any names, but I love this soup. Watch this.
You always do the eye roll.
Okay. I like the crunch. Ooh, hot. This is good stuff. Hi guys, it's Ree Drummond, the Pioneer Woman, and today you are going to make my lasagna soup, and I promise you won't regret it. It is so delicious. I'm gonna start by breaking up some lasagna noodles, and I'm gonna put them into a bowl, and then they'll be ready to drop in the boiling water later. I've already got boiling water going. There's nothing worse than having a soup or sauce all ready, and then you realize, oh no, I've gotta bring a big pot of water to a boil. I'm just breaking them into random pieces so you don't have to follow any sort of size. Got those on standby. And now I'm gonna slice up an onion. You just cut off the tip and then peel off the outer layer. This soup is one of my family's favorite things right now. It's kind of a mashup of lasagna and soup, which makes perfect sense. And I love things like that, where you take something like lasagna that you've made for years and years, and then you turn it into a completely different dish. So once you cut the onion in half, just lay it on its side, and you can cut nice half-moon slices, I call them. This is so much easier than slicing a whole onion because you have this flat surface that kind of stabilizes the onion. I don't have the fanciest knife skills out there, so I need all the little tricks I can get. Okay, I've just got the little bit. So the onion is sliced. I'm separating the onion slices. Now, of course, any lasagna recipe has to have plenty of garlic. So I've got 4 cloves. And the easiest way to break open a clove of garlic is just to take the knife, smash it with your hand. You can sort of think about the things that you're frustrated about this week. Whack a clove of garlic. Everything instantly seems better. You know, in the supermarkets, they sell bags of peeled garlic now, which is really a time saver if you use a lot of garlic in your cooking. I do confess to buying bags of peeled garlic cloves. So I'm actually a little rusty right now peeling garlic. I forgot how. All right, I'm just mincing the garlic, and it just kind of takes gathering it up, holding the knife, and just kind of rocking it back and forth. This is one of those things you can't rush. The more you mince it up, the more garlic flavor is going to wind up in your dish. Are you having fun yet? I am. Thank you for cooking with me. It's always more fun to cook with a friend than by yourself. Okay, the garlic is nice and minced. So I've also got a couple of fresh herbs, and they're 2 of my favorites, oregano and thyme. And I'll just strip the leaves off of the stalk. And I'll do the same thing to the thyme. Just hold the top and then take your fingers and just peel off the leaves. They come off so easily. Sometimes thyme is so delicate that you can actually just chop up the stalk along with the leaves. So I'm going to mince these up together. There is no better smell than fresh herbs. I live in Oklahoma and we have 4 seasons. So when I don't have herbs growing in my garden, I'm just not as happy an individual. Okay, got all this ready. Now I'm going to get over to the pot and get things going. I'm going to add plenty of olive oil, and I've already got the Big Dutch oven preheated. I just added about 1/4 cup of olive oil. And then you want to grab these beautiful sliced onions. Whoop. And this is why I wear floral or otherwise patterned tops. So if I slosh a little olive oil on myself, nobody will know. And then the garlic goes in. It smells amazing already. It's crazy how quickly that happens. And then all of these beautiful fresh herbs go in. Oh, I'm gonna grab a spoon. So you just want to stir the onions and garlic with the herbs and get those softened. Oh, just glorious. This is a great way to start any soup recipe at all. So these are getting off to a good start. So I'm going to add the meat. I'm doing a mixture of ground beef and then just some regular pork sausage. You can use Italian sausage. This is one of those recipes you can just open your fridge. If you have some ground beef that you need to use, if you have a whole bunch of sausage, you can just omit the beef entirely, do a sausage version. You could even do ground turkey. All of the recipes that I make are incredibly versatile, meaning if I'm out of something, I can swap in so many other things. I think that is the case because I live in the country and I've learned the hard way that if I run out of something I need, I'm out. I can't take the time to drive to town and go to the store. Okay, so you want to crumble up the meat, just kind of break it up with a spoon. And this is a good time to add some kosher salt. And this is not the last time you're going to see me grab the black pepper. I'm a big black pepper fan. And then it's just about stirring and cooking this until both meats are totally browned. So get up to that point, and then we'll keep moving forward. All right, the meat is totally browned. It took about 5 minutes. This hot Dutch oven, it doesn't take long. Now, depending on how lean your ground beef is, it's always a good idea to drain any excess grease. So I just kind of tilt it. The goal for me is never completely removing all the grease because there is flavor in there. I just kind of get out the big pools of it, but you want to leave a little bit behind because it does add to the overall flavor of the soup. I think that's good enough. And there's still a little bit in the bottom of the pot, and that's what you want. So now that the onions and garlic and meat are cooked, I'm going to start adding the other soup ingredients. Add some tomato paste. And you want to stir the tomato paste in and let it really get against the bottom of this hot pan. It almost kind of fries the paste and deepens the flavor. It kind of wakes it up in a way. And you just want to stir it around for about 30 seconds before you start adding the other things. And by other things, I've got a little carafe of the hard stuff. It's actually not hard stuff, it's just white wine. You can use red wine, white wine, whatever you have handy. And it's good to use something that you already have open. You don't have to use fine wine when it comes to making a soup like this. Oh, the smell of wine wafting out of a pan. I think that's one of the smells in heaven. Along with citrus, lavender. I have a list of smells in heaven. Okay, so now that the wine has partially evaporated, you want to add a can of whole tomatoes, and you can do diced tomatoes, stewed tomatoes. You can even do tomato puree if you're somebody that doesn't like to have big chunks of tomatoes. When I make my regular lasagna recipe, it always has big tomato chunks. So I kind of wanted the soup to be similar. Now, some fancy chefs get in there and squeeze the tomatoes with their hands. I'm just going to use the spoon. Every time I try to squeeze a tomato with my hand, it either squirts me in the eye or winds up in my hair, and I'm trying to look nice for you guys, so I'm just going to let the spoon do all the squishing and mushing. I really love this soup. I have 2 teenage boys still at home. My daughters are out of the house now. So the meaty, hearty, really home-style recipes are really front and center in my house these days. Both of my boys play football, so having a soup like this ready to go when they get home from practice is just my favorite category of things to cook for them. Okay, all the tomatoes are broken up, so the liquid for the soup comes next. I'm using 4 cups of vegetable stock. You can use beef stock, beef broth, chicken stock, chicken broth. Really, you just kind of want a flavorful liquid of any kind. You could even use bouillon cubes and dissolve them in some boiling water. In a pinch, I've done that for sure. Give it a stir, and then I've got some fresh parsley. I already pulled some of the leaves off of some parsley stems, and there's nothing complicated about this. I am not precise when it comes to picking the leaves off of herbs. I don't have time to be precise in my life. If there's a little stem in there, it's not gonna matter. And then with parsley, I like to chop it up, I call it kind of halfway, because I still like to see those pretty little flat leaves. You don't have to mince the heck out of it. All right, that looks fantastic. Now I'm gonna save some of this parsley for another little component I'm gonna make in a minute, but I'll add some of it to the soup. Give it a quick stir. And then I can't forget about my lasagna noodles. This is a good time to pour those in. All right, you need to bring the soup to a boil and then reduce it to a simmer and let it cook for 20 minutes. You need to cook the lasagna noodles, so take care of that, and I'll see you back here in a bit. So how does your soup look? Mine looks pretty darn good. It's been simmering away. It got a little bit richer in color. Looking great. I drained the lasagna noodles. You want to do that about 10 minutes in. You don't want to cook them all the way because they're eventually going to go back into the soup, and you do not want a mushy lasagna noodle. I'm going to wait on that because I'm going to make a really delicious ricotta mixture. It starts with ricotta cheese, and you want to add some grated Parmesan and the rest of the minced parsley that you cut up. Add that in, and then add some salt and pepper. This is very, very simple. In regular lasagna, you would make a ricotta mixture to put in between the layers of sauce and noodles. I'm going to turn these into little dollops. I kind of call them ricotta dumplings that go on top of the soup once you dish it up. Oh, and this happens all the time. I totally forgot to add the basil. No harm, no foul, it's not too late. I'm gonna pick off a few leaves, talk about an herb that I love. Oh gosh, there's no replacement for basil. It is delicious. And this is one of the herbs that is the hardest for me to get in the wintertime in Oklahoma. So for that reason, in the summertime, I really go crazy. I plant so much basil to the point that it's just coming out of my ears, basically. Now, you can just kind of roughly chop the basil. I just rolled it up in a really rough ball. And I don't know if I can even call this chiffonade. I just kind of cut it into strips. And then you want to add the basil to the ricotta mixture. And now I can stir it up, now that I've added everything. Sometimes when you forget an ingredient, it's no big deal, like with the basil. Even if you forgot it in the ricotta, you could sprinkle it over the soup. The worst thing to forget when you're in the kitchen is some kind of a baking ingredient. I have a chocolate sheet cake that I make, and even after all these years of making it from memory, every now and then I'll forget to add the baking soda. And I don't realize it until I pull the cake out of the oven, and it's basically a little flat chocolate pancake instead of a cake. Those are some very dark days. All right, so it's good to have the ricotta mixture all ready to go. I'm gonna get back over here to this beautiful soup, and I'm gonna turn the heat way, way down. Now, I cannot leave well enough alone. This soup would be delicious as it is now, but if you add a little bit of heavy cream to the pot, it doesn't turn it into a creamy tomato soup at all. It just kind of takes the edge off of all of that tomato and all of that richness. Trust me, it is really good with the cream. If you want to omit the cream, that's totally fine too. Again, this is one of those recipes that's totally versatile. You can add a bunch of cream if you want. You can add a bunch of Parmesan to the soup. You can keep the Parmesan limited to the ricotta mixture. There are no rules in my kitchen. Hopefully it's the same in your kitchen. Now it's time for the broken up lasagna noodles. Those just go right in. And they're just under the al dente stage. You want to have a little bit of room for forgiveness because when the noodles simmer in the soup, they will keep cooking. How beautiful does this look? Now I'm actually going to get a few more leaves of basil just because I feel like it. This time you can just tear them right in. No need to use the knife. Sometimes when I do things like this, I tell myself I'm being rustic, but I'm actually just being lazy. I don't want to chop it up. How pretty does this look? All right, now just wait till you see it in the bowl. Okay. When you serve up this soup, you want to have a bowl that has somewhat of a wide rim so you can see all the gorgeousness. And I really like food to look pretty, so I make sure I get chunks of tomato, plenty of basil, of course, lasagna. I'm a lifelong pasta lover. Okie doke. And then I'm going to add a little bit more basil to the top. You can keep adding basil or not. I don't think you can ever have too much. And then I'm going to grab a little spoon, and this is how the ricotta mixture plays out. You just scoop a little bit of a round dollop and drop it right on. You can just do one, or you can do two. Get on there. Or, if you're me, you can do three. If one is good, three is better. That's my motto. And then as this sits in the soup, it's just going to get creamier and creamier. Look at this. I have a little extra Parmesan left in the measuring cup. A little more basil. I told you I can't stop. Look at this soup, guys. I've been smelling it, and now I cannot wait to taste it. Oh. It is even more delicious than the last time I made it. It's so rich and meaty and hearty. Honestly, that cream really sends it over the top. It just kind of adds a richness. I taste the basil. I got a little piece of the ricotta. It's perfect. Lasagna soup. I hope you love it. I'm so glad you cooked it with me. I'm just making a quick soup. This is a really quick and easy corn and cheese chowder. I've had some onions cooking in some butter, and I threw in some pieces of bacon. Now I'll just stir this around and let it cook. And I've also got some diced bell pepper. I've got red, orange, and yellow because they're so pretty together, but you can use whatever you have on hand. Okay, I'm gonna let the peppers cook. And then I've shaved the kernels off of 5 cobs of corn. And I'm just gonna dump the corn in. This is a piece of cake, this soup recipe, but you wouldn't know it when you taste it. It is extremely impressive and yummy. Now stir the corn around. Okay, now I'm gonna add a 1/4 cup of flour. Just sprinkle it over the ingredients and give it a stir. Now I'll just pour in some chicken broth as I dribble it across the counter. So I'm gonna grab half and half. You can use milk instead of half and half, but why would you want to do that? So I'm just gonna add a little salt, good amount of pepper, and just give it a stir. And that is it. All you need to do is put the lid on, let it simmer for about 15 minutes or so. Oh my. Oh, it looks so good. It's really thickening up. The kitchen smells divine. Now I'm just gonna finish off the soup by adding some cheese. I've got a cup of Monterey Jack, which I think is great in soups because it's so creamy and it melts so nicely. And then I'm also gonna add a cup of pepper jack cheese. That's gonna add a nice kick. I'll stir it in. Oh, the cheese really, really sends this soup over the top. So good. And then last thing, I've got some sliced green onions, about 1/3 cup or so. And that is one yummy soup. But I think I should make sure it's one yummy soup. I'm gonna give it a taste. Yep, my suspicions were confirmed. It's perfect. I've started by browning a bunch of ground beef, the star ingredient, and now basically everything goes in. I've got some minced garlic, and I'll add a good amount of tomato paste. I love the tomato paste. It gives it just a nice, rich, tangy flavor. And I'm gonna stir the tomato paste in just to give it a chance to start frying a bit. Of course, Lad loves the soup, so that checks a very important box for me. The tomato paste is stirred in, so I'm gonna add a can of diced tomatoes with the juice. And this is part of what makes it a quick and easy version of hamburger soup. I'm gonna add a bag of potatoes O'Brien, which is basically potatoes, peppers, and onions. It's a really great shortcut ingredient, and once the soup is all done, you would never know you have shortcut potatoes in there. Yum, yum, it's looking good already. It kind of looks like a thick chili at this point, which, by the way, would be delicious. But I'm gonna turn it into soup by adding a bunch of beef stock. This is just out of the carton. And then some sliced carrots, and the carrots are sliced pretty thin, so it won't take long for them to cook. So I've kind of figured out ways to turn this hamburger soup into a really, really quick proposition. So now I need to add some seasonings. Got some oregano, yum, yum, yum. And I like to give it a little bit of spice with some cayenne pepper, salt and pepper, of course. And then it all gets stirred together, and it is already looking absolutely fantastic. But I need to bring this to a boil, and then I'm gonna put the lid on, lower the heat, and simmer it for about 10 minutes. Right, this speedy hamburger soup is done, and boy, does it look incredible. It is so, so thick. So I'm gonna get it served into a bowl. If you like a little more brothy soupiness, you could add more of the beef stock. So to garnish, I'm gonna add some minced parsley. And to me, this is the perfect thing to serve on a weeknight in the fall or winter with a loaf of crusty bread. And this is definitely a standby soup. I love it. Ooh. Mmm. Never lets me down. I'm gonna whip up the best tomato soup ever. I love this soup. My friend Kathy's been making this soup for years, and every time I try it, I like it a little bit more than the time before. Now I've got some diced onions sauteing in 3/4 of a stick of butter, and I'm gonna throw in 2 cans of diced tomatoes. This is a really easy soup, which makes it even better. And then a big old can of tomato juice. You can use flavored tomato juice, but I like to just do it plain. The beauty of the tomato flavor really shines through. All right, now I'll just give this a stir. Now I'm gonna add 2 or 3 tablespoons of sugar. It doesn't make the soup sweet, it just offsets the acidity of all the tomato products in here. 3. All right, stir that in. And then I'm gonna add plenty of freshly ground black pepper. I don't always use freshly ground black pepper because it takes time, energy, muscles to crank this grinder. But Kathy always used fresh ground black pepper in hers, and I do it the same as she does. All right, now I'll throw in 3 chicken bouillon cubes. They just add extra flavor to the soup. This soup is really big on flavor, and that's why I love it so much. Okay, now I'll stir it around. I'm gonna crank up the heat and let it come to a boil. Now I'm gonna add the special ingredient that makes this soup extra delicious, sherry. I'm gonna pour in about a cup. The sherry just gives it a wonderful flavor, and I add it after it boils because I don't want it to all disappear. That's a cup, and then I always do this because I can. And now I'm gonna add a 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Did I mention this soup is delicious? The cream just gives it a wonderful richness. You'll get that wonderful light pink color, so delicious. Now I'll stir this around. Oh my goodness, it smells so good. I smell that sherry already. Looks wonderful. Now I'm just gonna add some herbs. I'll start with about 1/4 cup of parsley, and I'll just give it a rough chop. This soup really doesn't need much help, but I love the little green flecks in the soup. It makes it really, really pretty. All right, now I'll throw that in. And then a few basil leaves. I'll just roll them in a bunch and then slice it. And then the basil goes in. I'm gonna do a little bit more freshly ground black pepper. You can't have too much in a soup like this. All right, now I'm just gonna give it a stir, and I hate to tell you, but that's it. The soup is that easy. Now it's just about keeping it warm, and then I'm gonna gobble it down for lunch later. I cannot wait. Lad and the kids are out moving some cattle around, and since I'm still not gonna get to the store until tomorrow, I'm relying on whatever I've got in my pantry and freezer. This is my simple, perfect chili, and it really is just that. It's a total cinch to make. I just throw 2 pounds of ground beef into a large pot with 2 cloves of chopped garlic. Then cook it till it browns. While that's happening, I mix up the herbs and spices. 1 teaspoon of ground oregano, 1 teaspoon of ground cumin, 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper, 2 tablespoons of chili powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then I add an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, the spices, and give it a good stir. Put on the lid and simmer it for an hour. After that, I grab a 1/4 cup of masa mixed with 1/2 cup of water. Masa is corn flour, and it thickens the chili and adds a great corn flavor. After an hour, I dump the masa mixture into the chili, stir it together well, then let it simmer for a few more minutes. Then it's done. Simply perfect. Okay, I just snipped the bags open. Dinner doesn't get much easier than this, does it? And I'm just gonna place them in the pot and then just pour some water over the top. And then heat them up, and the water will eventually evaporate and it'll be perfect. All right, the chili's thawed. I'll just throw the beans in. I'm using kidney beans and pinto beans, but you can use whatever beans you have in your pantry. And I'm just gonna let this simmer gently until they get back from moving cattle around. And then I've got some fixins ready for the chili. The great thing about these fixins is they're all pantry and fridge standbys. I've got tortilla chips, lime wedges, red onion, and of course, grated cheese. You gotta have lots and lots of grated cheese when you serve chili. All right, who wants chili? There you go, Alex Marie.
1 scoop, please.
1 scoop for Todd? Daddy, how many scoops?
I'll take 3 to start off with. Then I might have to eat Bryce's.
I've got 2 pots going because I'm actually gonna make 1 for Hyacinth's family and 1 for mine. I'm gonna brown the meat first. I got a chuck roast and cut it into big cubes. I actually haven't told Hyacinth that I'm making dinner for her. I'm just gonna run in and pick up Alex like I always do, and then spring dinner on her at the last minute. Okay, the meat's nice and brown, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the pot. It's by no means cooked. It looks like it is, but in the stew, it's gonna simmer for a couple of hours, and this chuck roast gets so tender. I'm gonna add an onion to each pot. The pot is nice and brown. It has a lot of bits from the meat in there. And then I'm gonna add about 3 cloves of chopped garlic to each pot. All right, now I'll just stir the onions and garlic around a bit. The pots are so hot, they're almost translucent already, so I really just need to cook them for about a minute. So I'm just gonna take a break and grab a couple beers. It's been a long day. Just kidding. I'm gonna add the beer to the stew. This gives the stew really great flavor. So I'm just gonna add 32 ounces of beef stock to each pot. Now to the pots, I'm just gonna add a few dashes of Worcestershire. Worcestershire always adds a nice savoriness, a little bit of richness. Then I'm just gonna add a little bit of tomato paste to each pot. Gives it a little bit of a tang, gives the sauce a little bit of richness. So good. And I like to add paprika to the stew also. It gives it a great flavor, but it also kind of helps with the color. And then I'll add a little bit of sugar to each pot. Now the last thing I need to do in this stage is add the meat into the pot. So I'll just slide half into this one and half into this one. Okay, now I'll just stir the meat in, make sure it's all combined. And then all I need to do now is be patient. I'm gonna put the lids on the pot, turn the heat down, let the beef stew simmer for about an hour and a half, and then I'll put the root vegetables in, let it simmer until it's done. And Hyacinth is gonna be so happy. All right, the beef stew's been simmering away for about an hour and a half, and now it's time to add in the vegetables. I gotta tell you, oh, this smells so delicious. I smell everything, the beer, the broth. Now, I've got 2 carrots for each pot. And then I also have 2 parsnips for each pot. And then I have 1 turnip, and that's enough for both pots. So about a half a turnip per pot. Now, I didn't want to add these at the beginning because the vegetables would be pretty much disintegrated. So this is the perfect time to add them. Let them simmer for about 30 minutes till the veggies are nice and tender. The last thing I'm gonna do is thicken up the cooking liquid a little bit. I'll drizzle in some beef stock into 3 tablespoons of flour, and I just wanna make a really, really smooth, pretty thin paste. Now I'll just add a little bit into each pot, and then it's gonna keep bubbling just for about 10 minutes or so, and it's gonna make the stew just perfect and rich and thick.